Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. It's Drew here, and we have another West Coast Racers construction update thanks to our good friend Mark, who's finally back in California after a Cedar Point trip, which I'm sure he thoroughly enjoyed. He actually got to meet up with our good friends Taylor and Chad, Taylor from Coaster Studios as well as Chad from Ohio Valley Coasters. If you haven't seen their channels, definitely make sure to go check them out. But here's just a quick look at the aftermath of the fire that struck Magic Mountain over this past week, and it ended up being quite the blaze with about 90 acres burned, but none of it actually hitting the park, which is great news. You can see the closest it actually got to the park was just across this street right here, literally right there. That tree was blazing for at least an hour or so, which is kind of just scary to walk by for sure. I mean, especially with all the ash and the heat and the embers, it's just quite an otherworldly experience. But just to let you guys know, there is some good news, and that is the fact that the fire actually never got close to the supports or track for West Coast Racers like we were hearing. We were hearing from a couple different people that the fire had actually gotten right next to it, but that was not the case at all. The fire wasn't within hundreds of feet of it, so that's great news. And speaking of more great news, you can see a finished high five element right here, and it's looking fantastic. And they got all of these track pieces up within one day. We're talking another 5 or 6 pieces of track completed in one day, which is amazing to even think about. The curvature on this high five element is going to be insane for sure. Not as insane as the Twisted Colossus one, but definitely insane nonetheless. And there are even some extra track pieces after the high five going into a turnaround. But here is a nice look at that entrance archway to the underground, which is what this section is going to be called, underneath these crazy support structures for the track right at the final inversion. It's just a great on look, and honestly is going to be complete eye candy. But let's get a better look on the inside, and you can see here that that inversion is looking mighty fine with its weird support structure underneath. It definitely looks like the go-kart track is going to be right there, but it's definitely the weirdest support structure I've ever seen underneath that inversion. But it's looking pretty great in all honesty from right here at this angle. And here's another angle of the brake run, which is looking amazing as well. And as you can see, the brake run itself is not finished. That is the station right there pretty much. And then there is a good 60-foot gap in between where the station is as well as where the beginning of the brake run is. So hopefully we'll see those brake run pieces put in the near future. But here's a great shot of the high five elements that definitely look to get to almost 90 degrees on each side, especially with the white side. It definitely looks like it's hitting 90 degrees. Now on the yellow, it might be doing the same, but it's a harder angle to really see what degree turn that is going to be. But you can see the turn into the first inversion for that white side right there is almost complete. You've probably got one more piece of track before it actually heads into the inversion itself, so that's very exciting to see. And with the yellow track, it's pretty close to being on that turnaround as well. Probably another 2 or 3 pieces of track for that section for sure. But we'll just have to wait and see for that. But it's very exciting to see all this work going in right now. I mean, especially after a scary fire, it just kind of freaked us out a little bit, maybe, that there could potentially be a setback, but there ended up being no setbacks at all. And here's a look at the weird support structures again. It's just so bizarre. Like, why is that connector there and this there? And oh man, it's just weird, but I kind of love it in all honesty. It makes for some really interesting viewpoints. And here you can see that some structure has been almost complete at the bottom, going into those footers next to the go-kart track. And speaking of the go-kart track, most of the footers are done there, but we'll get another shot of that in just a second. Here's another look at the high five element, which is looking fantastic, as well as the transfer track right here, which is all completed except for electronics, I'm pretty sure. But here's the go-kart track with most of the footers completed and some of them curing still. So give it another week and we should be ready to see some supports in that section, which is fantastic news because that's going to take the longest for track to go vertical at. So here's another look at the high five elements as well as the launches, the first and third to be exact. But it's fantastic to see this support structure followed by some nice looking track. I'm really starting to love the colors of this ride, but it's a weird juxtaposition to Ninja, that is for sure. Just with the white supports and the red track, and then the white track and yellow track and the black supports. It's just definitely a difference of style in that suit. But to finish off this update real quick, there is some new covering going over this pavement underneath Superman, which is great. They are definitely coating that pathway, and I'm happy to see this happening throughout pretty much half of the park so far, and I can't wait for the rest of the park to get some new pavement in, hopefully to help with some of that heat and also to help repair some of the old walkways that have kind of gotten beat up over the past few decades. But it's great to see the high five in, and it's great to see that no real damage was done to Magic Mountain whatsoever for the fire being that close. But I've got to give a huge thanks to Mark for bearing the 107-degree heat at Magic Mountain today, which is insane. The heat wave has been terrible, and I'm really excited to hear more about his Cedar Point adventures. And I must thank you guys so much for watching and subscribing if you have. I know we've gained a lot more new subscribers in the past couple weeks, and it's very exciting to have you on board with us, the Parks Bros. And it really means the world to us that you'd actually spend time checking us out during your day. Like, it really is amazing, and I can't thank you enough for that. But if you haven't subscribed, make sure to do so. We're going to have tons of West Coast Racers updates for the next coming months until it's open. But of course, as always, we'll see you on the next ride.